And Jesus said to the cured leper, "Go off and present yourself to the priest and offer for your cure what Moses prescribed." We are reminded this morning by that verse in the gospel and by the first reading that Judaism, from the time of Moses in the Sinai until the time of Jesus, it was what we call now a theocracy, which is a Greek word actually. It's a society or a country that's run by its religion. And in our time, it's more Muslim societies that are run by its religion. And so a disease like leprosy, I just want to come down here and touch our new pews. Now I lost my track. Okay. That because it was a theocracy, the disease of leprosy, which was totally incurable and beyond any treatment at the time of Moses and at the time of Jesus, and totally dangerous to the community because it was so contagious and it was so fatal. And so the only way they dealt with it was through their religion, which governed the behavior of everybody, all behaviors of everybody. And so the behavior is like, it was the priest who made the diagnosis. You know, you have leprosy. And that means you, until that leprosy leaves, which is probably never, which means this is a life sentence, you are going to go live over there with other lepers, and you are going to be separated from everybody else for the rest of your life. And if you're good, we may feed you so that you can survive. But other than that, your life is over, literally. And you're declared unclean, and so any gathering of society, whether in the marketplace or social or business or church, you're excluded from all of that. So you're excluded from all these relationships and relating. And Leviticus actually goes on for 3 chapters talking about all the Mosaic prescriptions about leprosy. I was actually going to read them in preparation for the sermon, but of course I didn't get that done. So, you know, it's your luck that I didn't. The sermon would be twice as long. And but I do know this much, is that all the prescriptions were there, and this is the reason why it was there. And so there was good reason for that, because they literally could not do otherwise and survive. So it was literally the survival of the community at the expense of the individual in a way. But there was also the part which was part of Judaism and which Jesus addressed at every turn in his ministry. But it's an attitude that I think probably predates Judaism and was pervasive globally. And in a way is still pervasive globally in somewhere in our heart of hearts. And it goes by different names, okay? But at the time of Jesus, and coming out of the Mosaic prescriptions, is that if you suffer from some incurable disease, it's your fault. Or it's the fault of your parents, or it's somebody's fault. It's somebody messed up somewhere, and this is the consequence. You know, there are not just random acts of bad stuff. It's like every bit of bad stuff, it's somebody's fault. Amen? You know, and it's kind of like God's going to get you for that, you know, or temporal punishment due to sin. How many remember temporal punishment due to sin? There are more older people in this room than that, one. You should be raising your hand, Jack. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what it is, and I'm not saying that there are not consequences for bad action. I certainly had my share, and you didn't laugh, so you really took that one seriously. But at that time, particularly in Judaism, is that, whether you're a leper, whether you're possessed by a demon, or you're blind, or you're lame, or you're just plain poor, it's like it's your fault or the fault of your parents, and so God's getting even with you, and you're the worst sinner around. So what that meant is, you could tell the sinners by who's having a bad life. And then the rest of them, if you're healthy and if you have healthy babies and all that, you must be in God's good graces. You must be a good person. You must be a righteous and a just person because you're healthy and you have healthy babies or grandbabies. Okay. So what's wrong with that system? Pretty judgmental. Pretty judgmental. Well, I just happened to notice that in the first, for whatever reason, this is the first time I've noticed it in 37 years, is that in the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark, we're in the year of Mark, and so we're going to be hearing from Mark all year long until next Thanksgiving. In the first chapter, which we're concluding now, there's only one verse out of 46 verses, 45 verses. There's only one verse out of 45 that tells you actually what Jesus taught. Only one. And this is it. This is the time of fulfillment. The reign of God is at hand. Reform your lives and believe in the gospel. This is the time of fulfillment. The reign of God is at hand. Reform your lives and believe in the gospel. Pretty basic, right? Pretty fundamental stuff. Okay, so what were the other 44 verses about? Well, most of the other 44 verses are about expelling demons and healing sick people. Expelling demons and healing sick people. Who were the identified sinners of the community? Amen? They were the ones who were singled out. You have this incurable illness. You have this incurable demon. You must be the bad people. And so all the rest of us are good people. Okay? Those were the communities as Jesus came. Okay? What did Jesus leave? See, this is where we need to get a visual. I need to get a visual. I don't know about you. What did the communities look like before Jesus arrived, and what did they look like when he left? Was there any change at all? Well, there was. Every person who had an incurable disease, every person who had an incurable demon, was all of a sudden, they were now cured. And instead of being excluded from church, they were now in the front pew. Okay? So the rest of the community is now coming to church, and they weren't used to seeing these people in church because they were excluded. But now they're included. And who did that? Well, Jesus did that. And it means that now we thought we were the blessed ones of God and they were the sinners. Okay? And now what happened? They're the blessed. They're the blessed. And so now my whole thinking, my whole judgment, my whole attitude and behavior towards these people has to change, has to be reversed, has to be totally, this is gospel. This is what gospel means. This is what it means to reform your lives and believe in the gospel. You get it? Is your community relationships change at a very, very fundamental level, the most fundamental level, which is the level of judgment of your fellow human being. You get that? Okay. And it isn't even Lent yet. But it's coming up real quick. It's coming up real quick. Okay. So even though I didn't get the 3 chapters of Leviticus read, I did get the point, I think, of Mark 1. The most fundamental change that has to happen if we're going to be believers in gospel. It comes out of the miracles. It comes out of the exorcisms. It comes out of people going from being totally judged by everybody else and having a totally miserable life to being the most blessed. To being the most blessed. And what does that say about God? That is a totally new revelation of God that Jesus brought. Totally. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that God was that compassionate and that thoughtful and wanting these individuals to have, not only to have their life back, that's just for openers to have their life back, okay? But that they become the symbols, they become the living witnesses without saying a word, without preaching a sermon, they become the living witnesses of Jesus. They're the witnesses of Jesus' gospel. They're the witnesses of Jesus' presence. Without saying a word, just by showing up. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? That makes me worthless. Except to let you know that. And to try to practice that. So, anyway, I think that's the end of my sermon, actually. Because now I concluded that you don't need any more from me at this moment. Except to take that with me. And maybe to spend the rest of Mass, this Mass, of saying, okay, where is my reform needed? Just to bring it home. Take the message, bring it home, make it real personal. Where would my reform actually start? Not finish, just start.